I'm going to invite our three presenters to join me at the front. While they're doing that, I'd like to thank Professor Babu-Zibwa for a tremendously broad-ranging talk that's highlighted the importance of multiple and different perspectives, the challenges presented by various ruptures, and I think probably two of the finest metaphors I've come across, both of which will stay with me, and at least one I plan to use tomorrow, attributed of course, in a talk that I have to give to some students around leadership. Because I think the metaphor of the termite with the ant is a really powerful one. Okay, so we have a little bit of time for questions. We've got a tremendous breadth of issues that have been addressed in the last hour and a half. What I'll probably try and do is take 2 or 3 questions at once and direct them to different panel members. So do we have volunteers? You need a bottle of water. I can do that for you.
There's a question over here.
Anybody else need water? Right. So we have a question over here, please.
I would like to ask to C.K. Raju sir. So yeah, I am Arjun Iyer from Suraj University. So this comes from a young guy who is eager to know more about mathematics and physics and all. So you said in your presentation that Wikipedia is something that is not the right thing, or I presume you said it is not something that is true. So I would want to know, from where do you get your sources?
Difficult to remember. Maybe we can answer one at a time.
Hello again. Of course, my question is not a very serious question. I just want to pose it out of my personal curiosity. At the beginning of your speech, you were talking about the history of colonialism, and you posed a question. The question was, how did they produce missionaries to propagate their ideas? And I was looking forward to hearing about the history of producing missionaries, but probably it was not the place to talk about that history. Now, I know how I can get more information about the history of producing missionaries.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a third question here.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. در مورد ریاضیات my friend will translate it. در مورد ریاضیات پرسش هایی که ابتدایی که چرا 2 به اضافه 2 یا 1 به اضافه 1 میشه 2، آیا پاسخ های اساسی رو خود ریاضیات جواب میده یا متافیزیک باید پاسخ بده؟
About math and about questions of like 2 plus 2 equals to 4, or like 1 plus 1 equals to 2. Is this answered through math itself, or is it answered through metaphysics?
ما در حوزه فکر میکنم که هیچ علمی از علوم جزئی نتواند پایه های اساسی علم خودش رو در درون خودش جستجو بکنه جز متافیزیک.
I don't think that any of the partial sciences can find its answers within its own science.
وقتی که ما متافیزیک رو از دست بدیم همه علوم بنیان خودشون از دست میدن.
So when we lose metaphysics, all sciences will lose their own principles and their own basis.
و علم مدرن به دلیل اینکه پنجه در چهره متافیزیک زد در واقع زیر پای خودش رو خواهد.
And modern science, because of scratching the face of metaphysics, it lost its own standing feet.
و رویکردهای پست مدرن چیزی نیست جز نتیجه این بی خانمانی، یعنی بی انتسابی به وجود و مدرن.
And postmodern ideas are nothing but this, the result of this alienation and not having your own house.
Okay, thank you.
That's three big questions.
So we're directing them all to you, Professor Raju,
Yes.
initially.
So let me answer your question first about Wikipedia. See, the problem with Wikipedia, and I teach this in my course, is that it relies on secondary sources. You cannot say, I am a primary source, I am present here, this is what I see. And therefore, this is the truth. They will not trust you. So it must be published and it must be considered reliable. RS, that is their short form. What is RS? Only if it comes from a Western source. If you oppose it with a source which from a non-Western, for example, multiversity, they will say it's not reliable. Alright? So your sources have to be primary sources in history. So you ask, what is the primary source for knowledge of Euclid? What is the primary source for knowledge of Pythagoras? And then you will start finding out. So you look at the primary source, you find that you have no source at all. You have some text coming in the 12th century. And how do you connect it to somebody 1500 years earlier? And it may be just a spelling mistake, Euclides, key to geometry. That's a subtitle which is interpreted as the name of the author. So for centuries they thought, it was Euclid of Euclid of Megara. And then when the first English translation was published, that is what it says, Euclid of Megara. And then they will say, no, he's actually from Alexandria because there is no evidence that he's from Megara and so on. So this is the issue that you have to do. You have to go to primary sources. It's a very expensive process. To get one Jesuit source from the Jesuit library, Matteo Ricci who was connected to Christoph Clavis, it takes so much money. You travel to Italy, you have to have a translator, somebody has to fund it. Okay, so it's a very difficult process and it takes a long time. Now we can discuss that further later on. The second question was
About how to find out more about missionary education.
Oh yes, that was your question. How do you find out about Jesuit missionaries? So you see, they were a secret society. So if you go to their archives, they don't allow you open access. There are certain things that they will publish. Otherwise, there are certain things which are accessible only to Jesuit generals. So you have to piece together circumstantial evidence. So for example, let us look at Clavius. He was a Jesuit general. Now he was also responsible for the Gregorian calendar reform. Now Clavius published trigonometric tables which were precise to 10 decimal places. Now you look at it circumstantially. His student Matteo Ricci, who was also a Jesuit, came to Cochin. He writes to him. Now I have the original, I have a photocopy of the original letter, handwritten letter. So he says, look, I am searching for knowledge of the calendar from an honest mood or an intelligent Brahmin. And he writes that, naturally at that time, that knowledge of calendar is very important. And those calendrical texts contain this hyper-precise trigonometric values, precise to the 10th decimal place. And if Clavius knew about it, then he should at least have known how to measure the earth, which is what I showed. Okay, this is something which was known. He could measure the earth. 1672 is the first measurement of the earth, and in fact, even that time it's not believed. Because Columbus underestimated the size of the earth to get money for his project and so on. So you have to piece it together because it is a secret society and they did lots of things which are buried. And you have to use circumstantial evidence, which is a very good way of proceeding. Now as regards your question about metaphysics, I concluded on the mission.
I think,
Can I just complete that? I'll lose my track. Now, you asked about metaphysics. Now, the question is not about eliminating metaphysics from everything from science. It is not a positivist agenda. The title of my paper was Biased Metaphysics. Now, as part of every school of philosophy in India and Islam They accept empirical as a means of proof. Tajurba, you accept tajurba. India, every school of philosophy accepts pratyaksh praman. They do not accept, I mean, there are some schools like the Lokayat which reject inference as inferior. So this is a sort of metaphysics that you are accepting empirical proofs. But the Western position is, what is Bertrand Russell trying to do? He is trying to give a purely axiomatic proof, a purely metaphysical proof, based on what principles of metaphysics? That logical deduction is somehow superior. And that is not correct, because there can be different systems of logic. What he deduced, I can deduce something else using Buddhist logic. I can deduce something else using Jain logic. I can deduce something else using quantum logic. There is an infinity of logic, which he did not take into account. Because there was this theological belief that Aquinas had that, God cannot create an illogical world, reason binds God. This is part of Christian rational theology, taken from the Akli Kalam. That reason is universal since it binds God, and God creates the world, and he cannot create an illogical world, so reason binds even God, but facts do not. He can create the facts of his choice. Therefore, factual proof, empirical proof is inferior. So there is a metaphysics there. The point is, why should this biased metaphysics be there? Okay, it's a biased metaphysics, a particular system of logic, a particular dismissal of empirical proofs. So empirical proofs existed in mathematics, in Indian mathematics. They did not, after Russell, they existed. If you see the proof in so-called in the elements, it's an empirical proof. The very first proposition is an empirical proof. But they said, no, it has to be perfect, it has to be metaphysical. The way to achieve perfection is through metaphysics.
Okay, I think Professor Bouazibwa wanted to come in on missionary education.
I thought you were asking a more also general question. How were the missionaries trained? Did I hear you correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Now there's something interesting about these missionaries, depending on where they came from. Now, for those people who are in the Protestant or Anglican tradition, these missionaries came in the form of what we are called church missionary societies. And the contradiction here is that most of these raised their funds through activities you may even consider irreligious. Barclays, Guinness, Malthus, a whole host of them. They were brewing beers, they were doing this and so on, to raise the money to start the mission, to send out people to come and preach a Puritanism. You understand what I'm saying? Yes. So there is that aspect of their tradition.
I think actually, sorry, but I just in the interest of people who are going to speak a little bit later, I'm terribly conscious that we are running out of time. And so, did you want to add anything to that discussion? Can we take, I think, just one more question, in fairness to others who are on the agenda later?
Okay, this is a question to Prof. Raju.
We've heard a lot. Can I open it up and see if we've got questions for others of our panellists? Because there will be opportunity for private discussion, but I'd like to broaden it out, please.
It's a question that will, which is...
Sorry, can I please broaden it out? Either Claude or... Right, okay, we've got a question that's going to bring in Zol, who's not had a chance to speak yet. So, Claude, please.
I'm basically responding to the Bologna proposal, the Bologna process that you talked about, in context of what we are doing, because our decolonization process says that stop further Eurocentric colonization. And on the other hand, you are saying the entire academic community in Europe has now come up with the Bologna proposal, which is to extend the Eurocentric idea, to extend the idea of European university, not just in Europe in a coordinated way, but also outside Europe, and many other countries also joining the proposal. Now, all of us have always felt that forget about businessmen and political leaders, But as far as academics and intellectuals and university people are concerned, all have understood that one should not colonize and keep on colonizing other people under whatever means, either inducement or persuasion or whatever, but that people have the right to respect their own opinions, and they have a right to develop their own expertise from within and not have people constantly telling them that, look, Europe is a better idea than yours, and why don't you accept it, and try to expand the Eurocentric idea all the time. Now, a whole period of colonialism from 1500 to today was an expansion of the Eurocentric idea. And now, under the Bologna process, why are the academics and the individuals there still consistently wanting to expand the Eurocentric idea once again under a new label? That's a question I want to ask you, because you are interacting with them and you should have some answer, because we always felt, as I said, that intellectuals are decent guys. They're not commercial guys. They're not out there for a market in that sense. They respect the integrity of other people and so on. And therefore, Eurocentric idea is good, but keep it within Europe. Why do you want to bring again countries from outside Europe within that and continue with this process?
If I understand you correctly, you're asking why are we subscribing to the Bologna process? Is that?
Why is Europe starting with this process?
Well, I think maybe Chris can answer this better, but the Bologna process started was a kind of, if I understand it well from the literature, is a kind of to create a higher education area in Europe to compete with the US. That was an underlying thing, and to compete also with Asia, you know. So from that, I think it evolved a kind of a process that tried to harmonize the number of systems in Europe so that they can now become a cohesive area that people can move around. And they have done it in such a way that I must admit is very well done, in the sense that they can now crisscross. People from Spain can you know, except for UK has got their own reservation as far as I can understand. Maybe Chris will comment on that. But in that sense, they have created a base, which to a certain extent also give legitimacy to them by using names that is European. I mean, they have got programs like Erasmus Mundus, you know. They've got programs like Socrates, they've got program Mercury. All the names are very European in its nature, attracting people from other parts of the world, particularly Asia, to join that kind of a program. And I have a feeling when you go into that kind of a program, you have the same, you know, colonization process taking place, maybe very subtly, and this is the issue. Now, they do understand this. I think they've raised a number of issues. Now they're opening it up to other non-European countries. A lot of Asian countries have signed up. But one thing that really amazes me is that before, even among Europeans, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, even among Europeans and East Europeans, you have to sign up to a cultural convention of the Europeans before you can be part of the Bologna process. That is really very interesting. Two countries, I think Kazakhstan or there's another country, that do not sign up to the cultural convention, then they are not allowed to be part and parcel of the Bologna. So if you read it as an entirety, you find that it's just more than just education. There's some hidden agenda behind it. But because people do not understand this history very well, back towards Raju's case, we begin to, to subscribe to it and get, attached to it in a very subtle way. That you become quote-unquote colonized again, using that kind of a system that they are promoting. UK somehow or other resisted it for different reasons. Maybe you can tell us a story why. Maybe we can join you.
Is Turkey part of the Bologna process?
Turkey is part of the Bologna process, yes. It is.
Okay, I think we are at serious risk of colonising the time for our remaining presenters today. So I'm going to call a halt to this session now. Thank you to our panellists, to our speakers. Thanks for the questions. I think it's raised an awful lot of issues which I'm sure will give rise to a lot of discussion outside of the formal proceedings. Can I ask you just again to thank our three speakers? now have a short break for refreshments.